So it is important to have at least a little bit of planning before you jump into a project, as it will save you a lot more work down the line. Now, that doesn't mean you have to plan everything out, but you should have a general idea of where you want to go and how you want to do things. In continuation from the last video, in case you didn't see it, we're making a top-down shooter that is Norse themed. The main character wields a bow. So based off of that, the first step I do in my planning phase is to identify the systems that need to be created. So this is more from a code perspective. So I know that I'm going to need health and damage because I want things to be able to take damage. I know I'm going to need to do movement for both the player and enemies. I want to have a dash ability, so there's a little bit of mobility to the game so the player can kind of roll out of the way or something like that. A charged bow attack. This is going to be the main way the player attacks. I want there to be a boss at the end of the level with somewhat complex AI. I know that I want spawning, and I know I want melee and ranged enemies. So by identifying these systems, I can already start to think about what kind of stuff I need to code and if there's anything that I need to communicate with each other. So the next step of this is think of any core principles that you want to apply to your game. So for me, the single purpose principle, each script only does one thing, is something I want to try and stick to. So my movement script is only going to have movement. It's not going to handle animation. Animation will be called from an animation manager script. Then the next thing to think about is player scripts versus game scripts versus enemy scripts. So looking at all these systems, I can identify, is this something that needs to exist just for the player? Is this something that exists outside of the players or the enemies, or something that exists just for the enemies, or any combination of the two? So like, for instance, health and damage is going to be a player script and an enemy script. So what that tells me is I could design it in such a way that it's generic, that both a player and an enemy can have the same script attached to them that allows them to take damage. Same thing with movement. Whereas like a dash ability, that's just for the player. So I can design that script so it only functions with the player, and so on and so forth. This will give me a plan of what scripts I need to create and how I want to organize them in the project. Some people will do entire like graphs of mapping out how each script will communicate with each other. I find that that's generally too much, because as you start working, you're going to realize, oh, I didn't think of this cool idea, I want to add this in, or what have you, and you'll need to be able to adjust. So I generally like to have a direction I want to move in, a loose plan, and then that will get modified along the way. After you've done this base planning, the first thing to decide is, for a prototype, what do you want to get done? So for a prototype, has like bad graphics, is super simplistic. It just has like the core loop of your gameplay. That's what you're trying to iron down first. I want there to be able to have health and damage. I want there to be movement. I want the charged bow attack. We could have the dash ability. I don't care about the boss. I could have some spawning and some melee and ranged enemies. So given that, I now know what stuff I need to do in the immediate future as I start this project. So now I just have to choose one of these things from the list and do that first. Most people tend to start with movement, so I will start there. Then after I do movement, I'll do probably health and damage, and then start adding in extra features. It's important to get a prototype turned around relatively quickly, because you want other people to play your game as soon as possible, because that's how you can get feedback if the idea that you have or the gameplay loop is even worth spending any more time working on. It's generally a bad idea to develop something in a vacuum. You want to get feedback as early on in the process as you can. Hope you found this interesting. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you in the next one, where we will start setting up our project, start coding movement for our player.